are scared of evaluating people. All right, who didn't raise their hand? Get out of here.
Still scared.
My feeling about this is evaluating a speaker is 100 times as hard as speaking, because you have to give positive, helpful, enthusiastic, concrete things that the speaker can take away and improve on. Now, evaluate to motivate. What is motivation? Do we have an actual term to it, motivation? Everybody gets motivated by somebody else, and something else. So everyone has their own touch points. So think about it. If you're a speaker and if you're an evaluator, what motivates you? And when you talk to the speaker before their speech, find out what motivates them, because it's not necessarily going to be the same thing. And the carrot. Motivation is that carrot. It's sort of like when someone is riding a donkey and you see that old-fashioned picture of the guy riding on its back with a carrot on a stick in front. We're evaluators, and we're supposed to be giving the speakers motivation. So what happens when a speaker knows, hey, you know what, this is my 10th speech. I'm going to get my CC. Is the motivation that they have the same motivation that someone has when they're giving their icebreaker speech, their very first speech in front of the club for the first time? We're going to have some fun with that one today. What happens when we get the carrot? And just like what motivates us, everyone has their own thing they're going to do when they get the carrot. Some people, they get the carrot and then they stop. And that's the difference between people that join Toastmasters just to get out of it what they need to, and then they leave. And then those of us that are lifers. How many of you guys are lifers? The ones that are not haven't been in here long enough. I guarantee you will all become lifers at some point. What happens when we become a lifer? We became motivators. So outside of the Toastmasters clubs, we talk about Toastmasters in everything we do. I was giving a talk to Cambridge College this morning about something completely different. And I had a room full of about 60 students. And they're all saying, my name is Joe. And so after I talked, I said, you know what, can I put in a shameless plug? Because Cambridge College has a Toastmasters club. And I said, you and you and you and you and you should be in the local Toastmasters club. Because I couldn't hear you. And they all said, oh, no, that's a good point. So what happens when we get the carrot? Again, most people join Toastmasters for a variety of reasons. But what is getting the carrot? And when you talk to someone, what's that?
Getting the carrot is when we have the slow star word for a while. I was getting it frequently, and then of course, like when I was in a class or something, I put that little star up there. I even brought it, to have with me in Minnesota, and just, just silly stuff.
Silly stuff, okay. So find out when you're evaluating someone and you're talking to the speaker beforehand about what they want you to evaluate them on. Find out in advance, if you can, what's their carrot. Because if you can have a touch point when you're giving them an evaluation, that's their carrot, that they're reaching their goal, or they're starting to reach their goal, their motivation for keeping and doing better in their speeches is going to be huge. Without that carrot, people don't come back. People get scared off. Now, there's a bunch of different evaluation forms. They're all over the place. There's the evaluation forms that we have in the manuals. Like this is the icebreaker from the CC. Then there's all of the different ones from the advanced manuals. Now, if you've given your icebreaker, you can give it multiple times. I'm working on my 4th CC manual. It's kind of interesting because they kind of evolve as we go. But there's a lot of different evaluation forms. There's quite a few of them online that you can download. We actually uploaded these 4 evaluation forms right here. There's some samples if you want to take them onto the District 53 Toastmasters website. You should find out. Don't necessarily go by the evaluation forms on these. Because sometimes their carrot, the speaker's carrot, and your carrot as the evaluator is not going to be in here. You're not necessarily going to be working on the same ones, especially if you're working on your 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or in some cases their 10th CCs. So find some different ones that you like, because they're all different. This is by far one ask them, what do you want me to feel? Sad, happy, enthusiastic, motivated? Ask them in advance, what's your final outcome of the speech? How do you want me to feel at the end of it? So I saw what? I saw this, I saw this, I saw hiding behind the podium. What do you want me to see? Because that helps you as an evaluator give good feedback. And I heard. How many of you guys have listened to a speech as an evaluator and you miss a lot of the speech because you're too busy evaluating things? That happens all the time because you're concentrating too much on the details. Sometimes the best evaluation can be the simplest because the goals here are to give a good speech, to be fluent in your speech, to be heard, to have good body language, to have good eye contact. Those realistically are the key points towards which we as Toastmasters are working towards. Just because you're a DTM, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but just because you're a DTM does not necessarily make you a good speaker. It just means you've done all your projects and you've done all your speeches. I know DTMs that are not great speakers. I also heard someone give their icebreaker for the first time that's never spoken in an audience in front of their life before. I was blown away how amazing they were. I can't even imagine what they're going to be like at speech 10. I mean, they were incredible. Some people are naturally speakers. Some people are not. Practice makes perfect, and feedback from good evaluators is the most helpful thing. And from the speaker standpoint, if you're not actually taking what your evaluator is giving you and putting into practice, you're never going to learn and you're never going to better yourselves. This happens to be one of my favorites. Has anybody heard of him, Andrew Gluggen? 6 Minutes. This is one of my favorite blogs, 6minutes.gluggen.com. This is also online. He is a really good motivator. He has some great points. One of his recent blog posts was about the sandwich technique, which we'll talk about in a moment. But he has something called the modified sandwich. And what he says is the sandwich technique isn't necessarily the best, but the modified sandwich is because you're putting some more variables in it. And instead of just having a couple of different layers, you're adding more things. You're adding condiments to it. Instead of having just bread, meat, bread, you're having bread, meat, fish, cheese, macaroni, dressing, and then the bread. But he makes some really interesting points. And I love his evaluation sheet because it gives you a voice. Great. Do I have a deep voice or not? Volume, pace, pitch. And he has all of these things broken down. Some of the Toastmasters evaluation forums have things broken down, but I like his particular one because they're really spot on in terms of what you're looking for in techniques. Now this is the sandwich approach. This is the most common form of giving a good evaluation. Not necessarily a great evaluation, but a good evaluation. Who's had to evaluate a really, really good speaker? It's really hard because you're like, I can't think of anything to pick on. But the sandwich technique is useful because you can say, that was a great speech. I really couldn't think of anything. But if you have one little nitpicky thing, that's the meat. That's for a really experienced speaker. But if you have a beginning speaker for the first time, the sandwich technique is the bread, the meat of it, which is where there's room for improvement, and then the bread. So the top layer is, that was a fantastic speech, you did a great job, and then one or two other really good comments. The meat of it is, here are some rooms for improvement. And this is important because when you're giving feedback to people, it's not, you should have, it's, well, I would have. Maybe you would have considered this. When I was listening to, they did this as a great example for you to use. It's never you, it's always I or them. So keep that in mind when you're doing an evaluation, because a you to someone immediately puts someone on the defensive. This is what happens with a lot of people. How many of you guys were nervous when you first gave your icebreaker? Okay,
I read mine.
You read your, is there anybody here that wasn't nervous? So how come everybody doesn't raise their hand? Are you guys just lazy? It's warming up too much, that's what it is. I'll have them open the window.
It took me a while to get through. I had to be coached, and I had to repeat a couple times because I didn't quite pass for Jeanette, so I had to be kind of coached to tell stories. I still didn't pass totally, but they kind of let me go. Still, I had to kind of be practice. do a couple repeats. So.
Good. Don't scare people, especially in the beginning, especially if you're evaluating an icebreaker. I would say up until the third speech, and everybody's going to tell you a different thing. This is my personal take on it. Be nice. Maybe be a little bit nicer than you would have otherwise. Don't scare them off the first time. I've been to a couple of Toastmasters meetings recently where a couple of people gave their icebreakers, and the evaluation was excellent, but it was also really, really pointed. And you could see the expression on the person that gave the icebreaker speech. Do you think they're going to get up and give a second speech anytime soon? No. You think they're probably going to leave the club? Yes. Be gentle, nice, warm, more fuzzy feelings when that first speech is going on. Did you want to give people the thumbs up? And this is an important one. I bring this up. Clapping. What do we do in Toastmasters? Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Clap, clap, clap. How many of you guys have been to a Toastmasters meeting where someone gets up to speak and maybe 3 people? Come on, guys. Clapping is enthusiastic. Clapping gives motivation. So when someone comes up to speak, everybody should be paying attention and everybody needs to clap. When they go and sit down, clap. Even if you're not paying attention, just peripherally think about the fact you need to clap no matter what else you're doing, because that person feels that, they hear that when they're coming up. It'll give them a boost. Now what we're going to do, and I'm going to actually leave the clapping up here for a second. We're going to do some practice runs. Nathan is my guinea pig for the day. He's going to give his icebreaker speech. And this should be really interesting because we're going to have 3 evaluations for him. The first one is going to rip him. This is not recommended for normal Toastmasters use, guys, okay? But just to give you an example of a really scary evaluation. And just to give you an example of that, a couple of years ago, I had a woman, it's a really sweet, lovely lady. Her boyfriend just broke up with her. She evaluated me. I have a really thick skin. I was ready to cry at the end of it. Seriously, it was that bad. So think about it. You don't want to scare people because a lot of people don't have thick skins. And then we're going to have a whitewash one. And a whitewash one is, you did an awesome job. You did an awesome job. And then the third one is going to be what we should be doing as an evaluator. Now, all of these speakers are really experienced Toastmasters. They know what they're doing. Now, Nathan is a member of the Central Connecticut Advanced Toastmasters Club. He joined Millstone Toastmasters Club in December of 1999. He's a long-time Toastmaster and gave his icebreaker speech 15 years ago this month. Sort of like deja vu all over again. So he's going to be giving his icebreaker he gave back then as a brand new Toastmasters member, nerves, jitters, and all. So please help me welcome Nathan Jacob.
Hi. My name is Nathan J. Cox. I was born in March 26th in LaPorte, Indiana. Now, some of you that may not know where LaPorte is, let me just say what I tried to do is to tell people that it's between where Notre Dame is in South Bend and Gary, Indiana, that smelled because of steel mills. My mother at the time of giving birth was 26 years old and my father was 33. My father was also a 4th grade teacher. I was born premature. I had underdeveloped lungs and I had no fingernails or toenails. I was in the hospital for a very long time, actually not that long, a couple of weeks, because I was the only kid that couldn't go home with mom because I was too underdeveloped. But I finally did get home, and I was surprised to find that I had two older sisters, and they treated me well for a little bit of while until I was able to get off the bottle, so to speak. Next, I went to Lincoln Elementary School, and then after that, we moved from the urban area where that was way out to the country, and then I went to Critchfield School, and that was where my dad taught. I got a really funny story. I got in trouble once. I forgot what I was doing, but I ended up being in the principal's office and in like a corner because I was bad. And my father came in to, his teacher's box was like, the mailboxes were right above that. And so he went to get his mail, and I was in trouble twice. As a teenager, as I was growing up, I decided that I had some interest in, making money, as every teenager needs money. And so I worked at this place called Lawrence Pool and Supply. It was a company that they install below ground swimming pools and construction, and so I eventually was on a crew with them. And then during that time, there was a book that I read at age 15, and I decided to, wait a minute. This book was called The Legacy of Hiroshima, and it was about the project, the Manhattan Project. Probably all of you have heard of that. That enabled the atomic bomb to be created. And at age 15, I was pretty impressionable, but one of the things that I didn't want to do is to dedicate my life to killing people. And so there was, I don't know, I think it was chapter 7 or 8 in that book, was called From Swords to Plowshares. And that was the one little chapter about 6 pages long that was all about the potential peaceful uses of nuclear energy and potentially even giving free electricity to people because it would be so cheap. So at the age of 15, I did decide to dedicate my life to the peaceful application of nuclear energy. And so because of that book and that chapter, and so I ended up going to college, getting a nuclear engineering degree, and then working at the Millstone Nuclear Power Plant here in Waterford. Some of the other things that I would like to share about me is I really like to go hiking on trails and stuff like that. Travel. I like to travel a lot, not just around Connecticut, but around New England, because remember, I'm from the Midwest, and this is all new to me, pretty much. I've only been here about 12 years, and so I like to get around. One of the hobbies, I like to go to antique shops and stuff, and I didn't tell you about my mentor. As I was growing up, I had this mentor. He was an old bachelor, and he was Harvard educated. He used to be out in this area, and he really, he had a farm, and so I worked on his farm, and he was able to really get me interested in education and the importance of it and everything. And I forgot why I said that. But anyway, my goals in Toastmasters is to meet new friends. I hope that I'm able to do that. I also would like to learn a little bit about wines, and I hear there's some wineries around Connecticut, and I would like to go to each one of them. I guess that's all.
I don't know about you guys, but the first couple minutes was like, this is a really experienced Toastmaster faking it. And then you could tell he actually started getting into it, like, oh yeah, I'm having deja vu, weren't you? I could see that up there. It's like, oh yeah, I remember what it felt like to stand up here. So our first evaluator is going to be the meanie. So just keep in mind, these two know each other really well. They already had a conversation. They're not going to take it personally. So please help me welcome Rich to evaluate Ethan.
Thanks, Heather. In Toastmasters, there's a common evaluation technique where you use the sandwich technique. Well, Nathan, today, I'm sorry, there's going to be no buns. Now, first off, as a speaker, you're supposed to be enthusiastic about it. And that shuffle up to the front, you look like you were going to a funeral. You're supposed to be enthusiastic about it, so the audience is enthusiastic about it. And that needs to be done the next time that you do this speech. And I would recommend that you do this again because you have a lot of things that could be improved on. As for the ums and ahs, I stopped counting at like 20 because I just couldn't keep track of all of them in my head because it was so distracting to hear all this, just this choppy speech being chopped up by all these ums and ahs and awkward, long, awkward pauses. I also kind of found the subject matter a little bit boring. It kind of sounded like an online dating profile. Stuff that you've done. And, you know, your face kind of looked like a poker face. It's good for a poker game, but not so much when you're speaking to an audience. I mean, when we could see it because you were reading your notes the whole time. So we couldn't hardly see your face, but it was a poker face anyway, so, you know, it really didn't matter. Additionally, you were kind of all over the map. You know, I felt like I was in my friend's car driving home late at night and ending up, and I think the audience felt this way too. Like, we ended up in this cornfield and we didn't know how we got there late at night. You know? And that's kind of how I think a lot of the audience felt this time around because there were just times when you just go off on a tangent, you know, talking about your mentor and talking about just stuff that didn't relate to like what you wanted to communicate. So make sure to take care of that in your next speech. It would be really good to do that. Additionally, you have this really weird tip that you do up here, and where you kind of shuffle from foot to foot, and you kind of sway like the Tower of Pisa, you know? And it'd be really good because I found that really distracting, you know, seeing that swaying from side to side. That was really, along with the ums and ahs, that was just like synergistic for me. It really discouraged, it didn't make me want to listen to more of it. And that's the whole point of being a speaker. It's about wanting people to hear more from you, just like you guys all want to hear more from me. I found that you read your notes. Congratulations on making notes, but you could have handed them all out to us and just not spoken at all. We could all just read them. So that's another way that you can improve your speech the next time is to, you know, not read your notes. And finally, I found your ending really abrupt and awkward. This is like Kramer and Seinfeld awkward. You just kind of quit and tripped out the door. It was really, wow, it was something. So this was something for a first speech, and I'd really recommend that you do this again. You've got a lot to work on, as you can see. And as you've heard, one other point here that I need to make. You sounded kind of like a robot. when you talk. You know, it was just kind of like being on the phone with one of those telephone robots. So, you know, you can vary your voice up and down and really make it more interesting for the audience. But all in all, you've got a lot to work on. In all areas, there are areas of things that you can improve on, and you know, I think you can make a better effort of it next time, in my opinion. Thanks.
He's crying over here. Okay? Now, that was hilarious. We all knew it was fake. But, thank you. If you had been listening to that and that was real, those Snickers of yours would be horrified Snickers, not real ones. Think about how that kind of bad evaluation can have an effect on someone, because that's really, really, really important. How many times did he say you? Over 70, I was counting. Good job. You, bang, bang, bang. Take out the word you if you can. Now, we're going to make him happy. Maybe too happy. So can I ask Walter, please, to evaluate me?
Wow, that was an icebreaker. Congratulations. This is the first time you've been to the club and you gave your icebreaker speech already. That's a great accomplishment. I love the fact that even though you were using notes, you looked up and made eye contact with the audience. That's real important. And so I felt connected. Everybody felt connected, didn't you? And the purpose of the icebreaker speech is to let us get to know you. And we learned all about you. We learned about your birth. We learned about where you did this. We learned about your job. Oh, it was very thorough, very wide scope. We learned so much about you, so much interesting information. It was great. Later on, in the basic manual, there's a speech on gestures. But you're already doing that. When you're talking about being born without the fingernails, that was great. I thought, this guy, he's got to be on a fast track. You shared your personal story. We all got to know you. The part about the swords to plowshares, I was really moved by that. Please. That is phenomenal. That was a turning point in your life at age 15. What were you doing at age 15? And you're following through. That's where you're working. I thought it was a wonderful speech. I'm looking forward to your next one. Thank you.
I'm a natural, I guess.
So that's a whitewash. There's no suggestions for improvement.
Oh.
Walter, although I think you missed that's the best speech I've ever heard part that you were telling me. But he would have said that, I'm just filling it in. Because he told me earlier he was going to. So think about that. Even if it's an icebreaker, give them at least one little tidbit that they can improve on. Hey, you know what, maybe you can work on your movements a little bit. And he did have a little teeny bit of eye contact, but maybe you can work on your eye contact a little bit more. Don't be sorry, you're not really sorry. You did a great job for yourself.
Sorry, I have eye contact.
Oh. Okay, he didn't have any eye contact, so that would have been one area for improvement. Have any eye contact. So we're going to have a third evaluation. And this is a good evaluation. This is by a very, again, experienced Toastmaster who knows what he's doing, and all of the speakers here are experienced Toastmasters. They know how to give good speeches and good evaluations. So please help me welcome Mike. Mike will evaluate.
Fellow Toastmasters, guests, if we have any here, especially Nathan. First off, I want to applaud you because you did step up to do your icebreaker. And for those of you who don't know, the two objectives of an icebreaker is to, first of all, introduce yourself to the audience, and secondly, to begin speaking in front of an audience, which you did. And again, I applaud you for that, because that is what you were supposed to do as a new speaker. What I'm going to try to do is to highlight some of your good points and give you some suggestions for improvement, and then give you an overall wrap-up of where I think you should go with that. Having looked at you, I can see that you have some good qualities. First of all, your speaking voice is good. Your gestures, when you use them, are demonstrative. They're very good. Your use of the English language is very good. We'll talk about the notes a little bit in the suggestion for improvement, because I think if you had been out of your notes, you would have felt a little bit more comfortable in front of the group. You might think you wouldn't have, but I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go along. You've got some unique humor capabilities, and we could see that from some of the things that he said during his speech, and from some of the gestures that he used. So I highly suggest that you use that to your advantage in your ongoing speaking performances, because I think that really helps you with being able to present ideas to the people and getting them to listen. You also have a storytelling ability that I could see in the preparation that you gave by preparing your speech, and in the way you related some of it. So I highly suggest you use that ability to go further in your speaking. Now let me give you some suggestions for improvement. I think this will help. Use of notes. I'll get into that a little bit, because I know this was your first speech, and it's something that you have to learn to feel comfortable with. Understand that most of that information came from in here and up here. And if you internalize that, you'll be able to relate it a lot better instead of looking at the notes. Just like you would talk to me in the hallway, you'd feel more comfortable talking to us without having to look at that information, because you can speak that from the heart and from the head. So try to minimize the use of notes if you can, and internalize what you prepare in your speech. Go over it several times before you actually give it. I didn't hear if there was a title, because it wasn't introduced as a title, but sometimes if there's a title, the audience will be able to relate to what you're going to talk about a lot better. So ensure that whoever's introducing you says what the title of your speech is, because it makes the audience feel good. And then one more thing I think that you could probably do is try to move a little bit. It's not something that's easy, but it's something that will help you to feel comfortable with the audience. A little bit of movement, a little bit of eye contact. Feel like you're part of the audience, and you eventually will become better at all of it. So overall, I think you did a great job by getting up here in the first place and sharing with us those things that were so very personal to you. And I suggest highly that you do it again with number 2, which is going to build on the skills that you will have to have as you go through your 10 speeches. So thank you very much.
Thank you to our speaker, Nathan.
I so look forward to continuing this club.
Now, this is a little bit different than how a regular meeting would be run, because I would have introduced the speaker, I would have given a title, and in this case, we purposely didn't do a title, because that's a rookie mistake. How many times have you had someone get up and do an icebreaker, and they're like, I was supposed to do a title? And the Toastmaster didn't, they got last minute, oh, where's your title? The icebreaker? That's the name of the speech. So the things that we're going over today may not necessarily be realistic, because if you were an evaluator coming up for the first time, some of the suggested things would be to read some of the objectives from this. And Mike did that. So when you're working on manuals as an evaluator, even if you're using some of those other evaluation techniques, tell the audience when you're talking to them about what the speaker's supposed to be working on about the speech in general, just to give them an overview. Speaking to inform, for example, working with visual aids. Give them a little bit of a heads up about what the object of the speech was. And how many of you guys learned something today? Just that's better. How many of you guys are going to go back and give a good evaluation? Okay. How
It's
many
a
of
hard
you guys?
thing to do, you know.
What's that?
It's hard.
It's hard to give a good evaluation. It takes a lot of practice. My recommendation is, how many of you guys are in a club that has some experienced Toastmasters in it? Okay. If you don't, try to go visit some other clubs that do have experienced Toastmasters that have given a lot of speeches and, more importantly, a lot of evaluations. Because the best way to become a better evaluator yourself is to learn and observe other evaluations. In Cromwell, we have Bill Sullivan, who I think is probably one of the best evaluators I've ever heard. And we also have Andrew Watt, who's not even, I think he just completed his 10 speeches for his CC. He's one of those people that when he gave his first speech, I was on the floor. I was like, this is phenomenal. He's a school teacher, but he really has a lot of charisma and enthusiasm, and he's got these great Denzel Washington pauses. And you kind of, you listen, like, oh, wow, that's really neat. But he gives great evaluations, and he's really good at finding your carrot. So I try to have him evaluate me when I go speak in Cromwell, because we try to talk beforehand, and he always finds my carrot for the speech that I'm making at, every single time. And every single time he gives me an evaluation, he says, you didn't get your carrot, or you did get your carrot, but these are some ways to get a bigger carrot, or a more tasty, expensive carrot. And he always gives me valuable feedback that I can take back and utilize. And sometimes it's just one little golden nugget. Now, why are the golden nuggets important? Because you can sell them for a lot of money, versus Bitcoins, which is what a whitewash is. So if you gave someone a whitewash evaluation, anybody know what a Bitcoin is, or is that a completely overrun?
Is that an expensive coin or?
It's a digital form of currency.
Yeah.
And it's dropping in value.
And it's dropping in value. But basically, it's not meaningless. You can't hand someone a Bitcoin and say, here, give me socks, because it's basically a meaningless form of currency. And that's what a whitewash is. The golden nuggets are stuff that people can store away and put in their safe and pull out later. And long term, it will help them go through their Toastmasters goals and become better Toastmasters. So what I'd like to see of all of you guys today is think about some things you learned today. Observe the people in your club. How can you help them? Get to know all of them better on the level of finding out, even if you're not giving them an evaluation, but what their carrot is. So when the time comes to evaluate them, you know what their motivation is. And make sure that when you have people evaluating you, you really need to tell them, think about what's your carrot, what's your motivation for the speech, because that all ties in intrinsically together. So I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Thank you all for coming.